Okay, we learned that at the end of glycolysis, our yield is 2 pyruvates and 2 NADH plus H buses. And these will go on to the mitochondrion if there's sufficient oxygen in the cell. The pyruvates will go to Krebs cycle and the bus will go to ETC. But you need to remember this. If there is not enough oxygen in the cell, respiration is stalled and fermentation occurs. So the thing to remember for the test is insufficient levels of oxygen, which of course is a gas, in the cell will lead to fermentation. If you don't have enough oxygen in the cell, then fermentation is going to occur instead of Krebs and ETC. The hydrogen bus can't go on to the mitochondrion, but it's got to unload its hydrogen. So what it does is unloads its hydrogen to our pyruvate. Then the pyruvate can go back into the cytoplasm and go through the steps that will be used in glycolysis. Now, when pyruvate joins to the two hydrogens, this yields lactic acid. And in our muscle cells, the lactic acid can build up and lead to fatigue. It also can make our muscles really sore the next day until all the lactic acid is metabolized out of the cell. In most bacteria and yeast, the pyruvate that has been reduced is decarboxylated. It loses a carbon dioxide and it becomes 2-carbon ethyl alcohol. And then, of course, that carbon dioxide gas from yeast is used to make bread rise, and it also produces some bubbles in alcoholic beverages. But if the bacteria are in milk and they ferment the pyruvates and form the lactic acid, that lactic acid in milk sours the milk. And that's the horrible taste that you get if you ever drink milk and it's gone bad. It's because lactic acid has accumulated and soured the milk. So fermentation is a process that occurs after glycolysis if there's insufficient oxygen in the cell. Even though Krebs cycle never uses oxygen, it won't occur unless there's enough oxygen in the cell. So if there's not enough oxygen in the cell, then fermentation occurs. Our hydrogen bus, the NAD bus that's made in glycolysis, has to get rid of the hydrogen. It can't take it to the mitochondrion because there's not enough oxygen. So it donates that hydrogen to pyruvate. Pyruvate then becomes lactic acid. If it accumulates in our cells, we suffer from fatigue. We can't move those muscle cells until the lactic acid is eliminated. In bacteria and yeast, the lactic acid is decarboxylated. It means it loses carbon dioxide. It forms a molecule of carbon dioxide and 2-carbon ethyl alcohol. And of course, that's used in the alcoholic industry, beverage industry, and that carbon dioxide from the yeast causes bread to rise. If those bacteria are in milk, though, and they make lactic acid, the lactic acid sours the milk, and that's that bad taste you taste when you accidentally get taste of bad milk. All right, so remember the stages of fermentation. And on your test, we'll go through the stages of glycolysis, and then the next questions will deal with fermentation, and then the next questions pre-Krebs, Krebs, etc.